part of the peak of it was the Rock Against Reagan thing with the Subhumans. They headlined. And I think we had to play first, right? There was a pecking order. You know, this is what I'm talking about. Like, the Subhumans weren't going to play first. That never happened like it. The Smiling Buddha, if you were the band that was like, you know, you played first, right? So for us, it was kind of great because we could just let it all hang out. And we said, okay, like, you know, you got to follow us. Well, okay, you're going to have something to follow then, right? And we just kind of do the thing. And it was very difficult at that gig for the next band to follow because we, for the first time, produced that complete wall of sound successfully. There was no fuck ups with the microphones or the cables or whatever, and people were just blown away. They couldn't believe it. And Ibra's voice came out as just this roaring kind of thing. But going back, the earliest gigs, you know, were kind of like, if it was at an art space or something like that, maybe there was a handful of people, like Push Gallery, maybe there was 25 people there, right? And that was okay. I mean, that was part of the whole thing. But for us, a lot of people, we couldn't play certain places. Like, you know, even when the first time we played the Smiling Buddha, I forget who we played with, within minutes, the plug was pulled, right? And one of the guys went and plugged it back in, right? Like, I forget who it was. But in retrospect, it was kind of a compliment because, you know, we actually played loud, and I always boosted it a little bit, and it wasn't, you know, the reason was to kind of get people to kind of jump their skins, to get, what the hell are you doing in this place, in this dump for, when there's, you know, you can be out, you know, in nature, or you can be in some other kind of more wholesome environment. Wake up. After a while, I decided, you know, where is this going? I watched the whole scene. I watched, like, the young Canadians and the alcohol and all that kind of stuff, and the addictions happen. And I thought, is this where I want to go? Is this what I want to be? Even if I get a recording contract? No. And then I basically decided, well, okay, that's I just pulled the plug. And there were kind of demands for us to play a few other places and stuff, but at that point, I got interested in other stuff, in kind of the whole kind of spiritual thing, and like, I had always been into yoga and astrology and numerology and stuff, but I began to kind of tighten that whole side of it up, deal with myself, because I was looking at, you know, dealing with this kind of music and the way I played it stuff. It was, I became kind of like a Van Gogh figure, in the sense, I'm not saying it was as great as that kind of thing, but I couldn't really take care of myself. You know, even though I was, you know, living a pure lifestyle, it was like, if I devoted it, someone had to take care of me, because I just couldn't, you know, sit there playing the guitar for hours and hours and be like balanced. So after, when I saw this happening, I thought, you know, okay, I'm out there, this is a problem, you know, I've got to kind of get back and try and think about deeper things, right? So.
Tunnel Canary is glaringly absent from the Vancouver complication.
Well, the way I figured it out, I tell you, I was pissed off when because first of all, the main reason was, I think we weren't in the main loop with those guys. Like, we didn't, like, if I would have been drinking and hanging out in the bars and stuff, it probably would have happened. But I wasn't, you know, at that point, you know, we were in Kits, we were near Zulu Records and stuff. But I guess people, they didn't know how to contact us, or they didn't contact us. But I actually went to Zulu Records at one point and talked to Grant and told him, you know, I told him how I pissed off I was. I said, why? I said, like, we have recordings. You've got people on here, like, with 2 or 3 recordings, you know. And what I figured out is, basically, it was that whole competitive thing. I mean, everybody wanted to be on that record. And they wanted to be on it. Oh, if you could be on it, well, they didn't care about you. They cared about them. And the fact was, E was given a track. When E, when I was in it, the band, I think they were offered the chance to put this thing on. I was still in the band. That's when Gary dissolved the band, so he could put his own piece of music on there, and under the label E, if you were close to the people who were doing it, and you know, you got on, and if you weren't so close, you didn't get on. And then I heard that they were doing a remake or a reissue or something,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
And we weren't even contacted for that one. And I'd actually spoken a bit to Grant about it, and you know, it was just shoulders shrugged, and I you know, but I was kind of pissed because I thought we were an important part of that whole history. Nobody ever acknowledged the fact, you know, that they had kind of seen what was going on, and I thought adapted it to their own sound. When they got their records or they got a chance to be interviewed, no one ever mentioned Tunnel Canary. And I thought, well, that's kind of what because I always, you know, mentioned people who had influenced me, and just to tell people where I was coming from, right? After a while, you know, there was just Tunnel Canary was like non-existent, disappeared. And at one point, somebody on the internet put, "Oh, this was a extreme fag band." When I saw this, I thought, okay, this is really pissing me off now. So I have to kind of say something about that. And at that point, the Punk History site had come up. So I had a friend help me get the pictures, and I actually put that sort of write-up together to explain how we'd started, you know, what it was about, and that it wasn't a fuck band, it wasn't a fag band, it, you know, that kind of stuff. That, you know, I took the music seriously. I mean, I took it seriously in the sense that I thought it was relevant, and I thought it was political, and I don't think anybody did punkier music, and I thought it was punk music. As I've said this before, it was music. I didn't know how to make any kind of music, other kind of music. So I felt comfortable with that. But because there were no drums, I think people felt it didn't follow the standard kind of form. So they didn't know how to kind of, you know, where to put it. Phil Smith's criticism in Slash, was it Slash? He had a column there that had followed somebody else. The first review we got was good, and then his thing, he did this little thing saying that, oh, you know, these people think, you know, this is so, you know, great. They have this little following, but it was written out of jealousy. It was written out of one of those kind of things. Like, I think he was in with the Pointed Sticks and those kind of people, and anything that began to take from that was, oh, this must be, you know, some kind of, these are Yoko Ono wannabes. When I read that, I thought, well, this is fucked up. I thought, you know, where are these people coming from? Like, you know, and I think if you listen to the record or the CD and you compare it to Yoko Ono, you're going to see there's a big difference. And but I still haven't actually heard her do her whatever she does, you know. But it wasn't about that. It was about, like I say, it was about trying to kind of make a hole, a dent, a crack in a social fabric that wasn't really doing its job. And we did it, and unexpectedly, it kind of flowered in a number of ways. You know, which even like 25 years later, it surprised me that younger people are still like either really mesmerized or kind of crazy about it. And I feel that, okay, that's all I need. You know.
Very interesting. You don't like the label art punk.
Well, I'll tell you why. It is because there's a certain kind of pretentiousness that is associated with, you know, with the art scene per se. And I've kind of, you know, experienced it in galleries and stuff. I'm not going to name names or whatever. And I've been part of it at a certain time. But you know, I came more from the street. I came from a working class family, and I managed to, through loans, to get a bit of an education. But to choose between, you know, an upper middle class or a middle class reality and a working class one, I'm more drawn to the kind of the raw working class, you know, the people in a sense. Now, there's things within that context that, because of my own now education and stuff and diet, you know, I don't, it's not easy for me to fit into it. But I like this energy coming from the street. It's raw, it's pure, and it's real. I had Ian Baxter of the Anything Company as a teacher, a mentor, and he changed my whole thinking about art and creativity. I had him when I was a student at Simon Fraser, when it was still a revolutionary kind of environment. Now, he had ideas like, he had a badge that you wore and it said, "Art is all over." Now, either way you take it, that was part of my sensibility. I kind of appreciated art as a kind of a funkier, kind of more fun, spontaneous kind of thing, right? But when it starts getting into that kind of highfalutin, you know, pretentious sphere, you know, I can't relate to that. I'm sorry. And all the politics and stuff that go with it, I can't relate to that either. So, you know, there were a few other bands that were considered to be art bands, and I saw what was going on there, and I thought, well, you know, this is like, you know, it's not where I want to be. I want to make this rougher. I want to make this, I want to kind of make this so people have some kind of transformative experience at best, if I can. And the rawer and the louder and the raunchier. And that's why I've always considered it was done in the context of punk. It was done in the context of rock and roll. And like I say, I called it tantric punk, voodoo blues. But we've had a few, or, you know, no wave surf music in that sense. There's been a few kinds of designations, but basically, to tell you, it was like rock and roll, punk rock, acid punk rock. What was the other thing? Or even, to tell you the truth, I even considered it pop music. Pop music in the sense that I would have loved to have heard it on the, you know, the AM stations. But of course, you know, even when I did it, actually, when we were doing E, you know, people, I would bring these ideas and they say, well, I don't know if anybody's, like, I told these what I wanted to do, and I don't know if they're ready for it. Well, how are you going to find out if they're ready for it unless you present it, right? So I thought, well, I had nothing to lose. You know, it wasn't like I had some big reputation or whatever. So I just kind of did it. And lo and behold, people began to sort of say, hey, I like it, you know. And other people kind of began to add those elements into their music. And, you know, eventually we had bands like Skinny Puppy and Mechanormal. And I actually had heard that they'd come to our concerts, or they were aware of what we were doing. So I believed that there was kind of an influence there. But we never had it together enough to actually market. We had no manager. We had no, you know, agent or whatever. I never even knew that was like, it was never in my mind to do that, right? I mean, it wasn't in terms of business, and, you know, we never put out a record at that because we had no money.
The classification, the genre classification, fast forward 35 years, is now called noise.
Yeah.
And you're having a problem with
that.
Why?
Well, I don't have a problem. I'm actually, I feel it's a compliment to be included in that genre now. But my thing has been, like, from, I guess, from the 80s on, people have started to designate, or they designated it as, like I say, first we were a fuck band, or what were the other words or there were a few other words they described, or an art band or whatever. Like, why couldn't it be just a rock and roll band? So then people said, well, Noisemeisters. I think one of the guys called us Noisemeisters. And I thought, well, what's the thinking here? Like, this isn't music? Like, what is music to these guys? Like, where do they draw the line between what is music and what's not music? For me, as I've said, the grass growing is music, right? The fridge buzzing is music. Like these are all kinds of sounds that can be put into a musical composition, which is what I was doing. So the fact that it was constantly designated as noise as opposed to something related to music, it was kind of a way to sort of not take it seriously, I felt. Like DOA does music, or the Subhumans do music. These guys, they do noise. Now, yeah, it pissed me off because in terms of like the punk aesthetic and what I knew and the whole idea, this was music. And now I have no problem if people want to call it noise now because there's this kind of respect for a certain genre and stuff. But I still myself consider it to be rock and roll music.